What's going on, everybody? I'm back with our final video of building with a double pivot with a back four against two center strikers. Now, I plan on this being the last video of this three-part series unless I come up or someone drops a comment asking for more information about a certain aspect of this concept. But before we start, please hit the subscribe button. It really means a lot. It allows the videos to keep on coming at this rate, and you guys have been so great to be subscribing like you have been. So subscribe, like the video, but without further ado, here we go. So just a quick note I wanted to make, something that we haven't really touched on, was what is the difference between maybe building with a back three and a single pivot, or a back two with just one pivot against two center strikers, because the two center strikers from the other team is really probably the main aspect on how they can press. So we have two forwards here, and let's get right into it. So I've highlighted two forwards, obviously. Maybe on the other team we can increase their vertical compactness by moving their wide midfield players up more, just so they're not so flat. That might be a little unrealistic. So with two forwards against a three-man build-up in the central areas, as we might see here, it can be pretty easy to press, as we see. So one forward can cut the passing angle off to the weak side, and depending how they want to play in transition, this player can go and try and back press. And here I just have the blue lines just indicating the structure of the blue team, and I'll go ahead and get rid of those so I can move the players without any distractions. So really, the 10 and the 9 are the two forwards on the red team, and a few different variations that can give blue trouble is one, just the number 10 blocks off the holding midfielder in the platform, as we like to call the space between the midfielders and the forwards. So the 10 blocks off the platform to the 6, and now the 9 has freedom to block off the circulation pass from one center back to the other. And now from here they have a decision to make. Typically one of these players will go and press. One way of doing it is emphasizing the use of the 10's cover shadow, so he can go and press while this player stays and cuts off the pass. So if the ball is the ball can't be circulated directly across with a horizontal pass, and if the ball is played back, he is in a better position to go and press. And finally, maybe the most important reason, if the ball is somehow won by any of these players, they have a direct passing option right to goal. So they're taking advantage of the expansive structure from blue and their build-up technique just through that little detail. So I'll cancel the rotation. Okay, and then the second option is having this player press. So usually we would say that this player has a shorter distance to run. Depends, but maybe he does. But also this player here, he's in a more dangerous zone. If the 9 stays, he can be in a very dangerous offensive transition zone, whereas now if we have him go press, he presses the ball up the field. And one thing with this is the ball can then be switched, potentially. It might be a dangerous pass depending on the moments of the game. But if he goes and backs press, then it just splits the attention of the center back, so now he's worried about what's in front of him, and now he has pressure coming from behind. So it's just a psychological principle. Human beings in general aren't very good at focusing on two different things at once, so that's what makes this version of the press particularly difficult. So with two players, they can effectively, by using some sort of superiority defensively, whether it's through a concept like cover shadow or just some positional superiority, like even just here, if they're zoning, then they can easily shift across and block the passes into the 6 and still have access to the weak side to go and press effectively. So they can easily create positional superiority with dual access, just meaning that these players have 2 players they can now reasonably press and be in a close proximity. So with that being said, that was just a quick note on now entering the double pivot system. And now we see the asymmetric midfield from blue with overload on the right hand side. Just highlighting that quickly so you see asymmetric shape from the midfield. And now if the wingers were to come in or something like this, then we have a 4-man midfield with diagonal passing lanes into the half spaces, but we won't go there just yet. So I'll just delete these lines quickly and we can move on. So now with the ball in the half space, if we go back to our transition using a deep lying playmaker, so now it's a weak side rotation, so when the ball travels from one center back to the other, and then now on the weak side, a weak side rotation, the deep lying playmaker, that's his cue to drop. Now they have a 3v2 and we're here. So now if we look at the press, we have one player here, the 10 cutting off the 6, and the 9 now has 2 players, which if they don't give reasonable depth, let's say the goalie's not an option to play through, we'll move them a little up. And the field is a little bit shorter and the play pieces are a little bit big, so they are not to scale. So just keep that in mind. Things might look a little deceiving. But anyway, so just a quick note. We have players in each half space in the build-up phase and someone protecting the central corridor, which we talked about yesterday in the last video. But now these players have a much harder time effectively pressing these players because now they have the extra man on the weak side to worry about. I'll highlight him here, the deep lying playmaker. And his position is typically a bit more flexible because he does drop from midfield, so he's much more comfortable stepping back up and creating a third or a stronger passing option. So as it stands, we have both passes blocked, and let's say one player goes to press, then maybe our weak side player can jump and maybe comes narrow. We have a third player we can then find, and let's reset it. Let's look at another variation. Here we are. So now in the center, we have a vertical passing option now, so a different passing option with the 2 wide center backs. We only had diagonal and horizontal passing options, but now we have this new added vertical passing option, which means these players have to be much more narrow to then effectively close this direct passing option into the 6. So what this does, it allows the center backs to fan out and the wing backs to advance. I forgot to do that. And now let's put the 11 inside. So we have the asymmetry still and still the overload on the right side. But now with the forwards more narrow to cover the 6 from just getting the ball and having them being split, now we have the half spaces more vacated where they can then just go and progress, or on this side we can just go and progress and dribble penetrate. So those are really the 2 main keys, and it is a bit harder if you have your center backs fan out and then the press comes from here, because movements like this, quite narrow, there is some degree of jumping that can be evolved, but when there's a player jumping, it does leave a 2v1 with the fullback as I'm moving with my mouse. So, but those are just 2 quick solutions to the 2-man press, and we do effectively have what appears to be somewhat of a makeshift rondo with the diamond of the build-up. So I'll highlight them. So one player, 2 players, 3 players, 4. So those are the players that make up the rondo, and the active defenders here are the 2 forwards from red. So just a quick note on that. So without any more talk about that, that was just one variation on how to break that down. And a quick note, probably the last quick note on this video, we'll keep it short because it is getting late my time. The quick note is when players were pressing, one advantage to the 2 center back system was when the 10 would go to press and put the 6 in his cover shadow, it was a shorter distance when there was 2 center backs. So now this player has to travel a further distance, which makes his cover shadow less effective, which even allows the 6 to then more effectively move and get the ball instead of the movement coming from the weak side center back. But then also, when this player goes, if this player does win the ball, he doesn't have a clear passing option into the center. It is still a dangerous situation, but it's not one man in the central corridor going straight to goal. So that's just a quick note. And then another good point is the passing distance is a little bit longer, but also the pressing distance is also longer from the wide center backs to the single pivot. So with that, it was just a short video clearing up some pressing variations on why we may use Salida Lavolpiana to create a back 3 with a deep lying playmaker from one of our double pivots. So if you guys want to know any more about the topic, just drop a comment. I'll happy to make a video explaining any concept, any questions you have, or if there's a team you guys want and any phase of the game of their game model you want explained, please just drop a comment, like the video, subscribe it, and I'll see you tomorrow for the next one.